What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Double Coverage, the premier NFL podcast of the Gin Sports Network. My name is John J. II. I'm here with Robert Rachow, our NFL insider, representing GSN. Robert, how you doing today, buddy?
Good, man. How about yourself?
Doing great, man. Feeling good, and I'm happy to talk some NFL football. It means it's on the horizon. It's on its way. We hinted towards it a little bit last night on the GSN pod. So happy to talk to you more about it, more in depth. Obviously, you're our NFL insider guru. So I want to pick your brain on a couple things. With the draft coming up, it's in Detroit, and we're happy to talk about it. And it's exciting times for the city of Detroit, for the state of Michigan, and for the Detroit Lions fan base. There's lots to build off of from last season, and we're going to talk about the Lions a little bit more in a little later. But I just want to talk about the draft, talk about the mock draft. What is the benefits of doing a mock draft? Where does Mel Kiper get all his recognition? Where does he get all his stardom from? We're gonna have some fun with that one. But in a real way, past the 10 pick mark, everybody is an expert when it comes to the NFL draft. And we're going to dive into that here shortly. But the NFL draft, as you guys know, is April 24th through the 27th in Detroit. They've been setting it up for weeks, and it's setting up for a big day in the city of Detroit. So what does this mean for the city of Detroit? And how does this add to the hype around the draft and, around everything surrounding the NFL, the anticipation? How does it add to it?
I think it's huge boost to the local economy. You're going to have a lot of people visiting to come see the draft. Obviously, with the Lions having a good season, it's kind of good timing to have it here in Detroit. And having been down there last weekend to watch Tigers game, it's helping the city too. Like they're doing a lot of work downtown. That's probably should have been done years ago, but now that they're prepping for the draft, they're replacing a lot of sidewalk, tidying up some of the parks downtown, and so overall, it's a good look for the city, and it's exciting. I'm kind of sad I'm going to be on vacation next week when the draft's going on, but it's going to be a cool experience for anyone that gets the chance to go.
Yeah, likewise. I'm actually going on vacation myself, so hopefully I can catch it on TV a little bit, watch some of the picks, at least watch the beginning of it, and see and check in with Mel Kiper and see if he's on point, because we're going to be holding him to a high standard. You really don't hear a lot about Mel Kiper any other time of the year, but draft time you hear a lot about him. That's the only name you really hear. Other than that, it's Adam Schefter, which he's basically he's the voice of the NFL for ESPN, and kind of everyone takes his word as gospel. If he tweets something out, if it's verified by Adam Schefter, chances are it happened. Mel Kiper, it's a similar feel with the draft. So it's going to be interesting to see, and it's pretty cut and dry as far as who surrounds the top 5 picks. We're going to talk about those top 5 picks. And are they deserving? Are they not? I guess that doesn't really matter to us. But it kind of goes off accolades and awards won. And we know the first overall pick projected is Caleb Williams of USC. And he's not one of my favorite guys. I'm just going to be honest. Not one of my favorite guys. Is he a star athlete? Is he a prominent athlete? I think he is. I think he's a great football player, great quarterback. He facilitates the team. He did jump teams, just like Lincoln Riley, and everything happened surrounded around that with the Oklahoma debacle, going to the West Coast and coaching the Trojans. And then Caleb followed shortly after that and went and played for the Trojans as well. So a little bit of a jumping ship situation, but then he went on to win the Heisman, and a lot of things took place following that. I think that added to his first round draft pick stock. So I guess as far as the top 5 is concerned, we'll just jump right into the mock draft. What does this mean for the top 5 picks? How does everything come into play, and how does the top 5 come to be? I guess accolades, everything aside, what does it take to become a top 5 pick?
Well, yeah, I mean, you start talking about obviously the Heisman, easy way to get to the top 5, winning national championships, um, winning a lot of football games, winning a lot of primetime big games, builds your notoriety. This year's kind of interesting because you got a couple Heisman winners, with Daniels and Williams. So
That's right.
it's kind of a coin flip, really. I mean, you look at their stats. I'm kind of a big stats guy, and Williams was what, 30 for 5 touchdown interception ratio and had like another 10 on the ground, but not a lot of rushing yards, more just like QB sneak, short yardage, goal line type stuff.
Hmm.
Um, Whereas, Daniels was kind of the dual threat, had over 1,000 yards rushing, threw 40 touchdowns to like 5 or 6 interceptions. So if you're just looking at the stats, you'd say Daniels is better, but we know it's bigger than that. You got to look at a game by game basis. And for whatever reason, all the analysts are kind of locking on to Williams. Um, so it could easily go that way, but I would not be shocked at all if Daniels went number one as well.
Yeah, that you bring up a good point. I'm looking at the stat sheets right here. You look at height. Jaden Daniels has Williams by 3 inches. He's 6'4". Williams sits at 6'1". Rushing yards, abysmal for Williams. Not a rushing quarterback at all. When you look at Jaden Daniels, over 1,000 rushing yards, and he has more passing yards as well, sitting at 3,800 plus, where Caleb Williams is at 3,600 plus. Also touchdowns, 50 to Caleb's 41, interceptions 4 to Caleb's 5. So it's like, how does this really add up? Because the numbers don't add up here. I could see if there was a discrepancy somewhere, within these statistics, but across the board, the numbers speak for themselves. Or at least you would think so. And I guess I'm kind of confused. I'm kind of confused on the top one, top two, that positioning, regardless of, awards and Heisman's and all that. So like you said, I think it's kind of a coin flip who goes first overall, and nobody can really truly be a, when you look at the position, both quarterbacks. So you really can't pick these two guys apart other than the numbers. So what makes one guy one over two? I can't answer that question because I don't know. So just looking at a couple other picks here. Drake May looking to go to the New England Patriots, coming out of North Carolina, doing a lot of things, making a big splash over there in the ACC. Marvin Harrison Jr. of Ohio State going fourth to the Arizona Cardinals. And he's a star. He's a star player. We know he's a star player. He's a star wide receiver. He belonged to the NBA or in the NFL before he even really declared for the draft, which I think is he plays like an NFL player in college. So
Yeah.
it's just it's a sight to see. It's really fun to watch this guy. And then they got JJ McCarthy, obviously national champ, going fifth overall. So going to the Vikings, which we all know they're in need of a quarterback after losing Kirk Cousins. And then you got Malik Neighbors coming out of LSU as well, and going round one, pick 6, and then you got a couple other guys going in there. Listen, I think past 5, definitely past 10, it's really a crapshoot. Who's going to get picked? Who's going to go where? And it's going to come down to need and want. And that brings me to the question that I got to ask you here, Robert. Give me the science behind the NFL draft, because an NFL draft is a very complex animal. It's a complex machine. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of thought processes going on, with coaches, GMs, other guys, recruiters, guys that are going to colleges and watching these guys play. What all goes into it? How does it all take place? And I guess as far as what we would know as, an analyst and insider, just looking into the sport, looking into the NFL draft, what does it take as far as chain of command, as far as sequencing? How does this all get thrown into a blender, and how does a team come up with a decision on who to pick and when?
Yeah, it's a year-round process. I mean, you've got scouts looking at guys all through the year. They're going to give their recommendation to obviously the GM, but the GM is ultimately going to make the decision. He's going to have a feel for who he wants, what kind of character the guys have. Do they fit the scheme of your team? Does the coach like them? Because if you've got a coach and GM that are not on the same page, that can create a lot of problems, which we've seen in the Lions' history. You look back to like former GMs and coaches here, where they're just never been on the same page, and they're always just picking whoever it seems like. Where now that we have Campbell and Holmes, they've picked a lot of guys that maybe went against the grain of their scouting team, but are guys that have now been in the NFL and panned out for them. So there's a lot to it, and really, I think it boils down to like two schools of thought. Like, are you going to take position of need, or are you going to draft like the best player available? And you can kind of go either way with that. Teams have had success with both. I think the Lions have kind of gotten lucky and able to get the best player available, but also position a need at the same time. So, when they take guys like Sewell, he was the best guy available at 8 when they took him. You're looking back to like Laporta, best tight end available in my opinion when they took him. Same thing with Branch, best defensive back when they took him. So, and they needed those positions. Um, you know, some GMs though, like Brad Holmes, he kind of goes against the grain, and he'll take players that are not um, projected to go where he takes them. He just likes the player that much, and then they come in, fit the role that he needs, and they go with it. So there's a lot of different factors that obviously go into an NFL draft, but at the end of the day, you're still taking a chance on a guy. It doesn't matter where they are, where they're drafted. There's no sure 100% player. There's a few exceptions, right? Coming out of college, there's a few guys that have just been, all right, this guy's Hall of Fame, but aside from that, I mean, you're still taking chances on guys, and it's still going to take years of experience in the NFL to really see how these drafts are going to grade out. So when they do the draft grades right out of the gate, I mean, they really mean nothing. Once it's been a year or two, you actually see the players in the game and how they're going to fit your scheme and offense or defense. Then you can really start putting some grades to it and see how well the GM, did at their job. But yeah, it's really complex, and as a fan sitting on the couch, it seems like easy. All right, we need a corner. Let's go take a corner. But you got to look at so many different factors. They're like the Lions. We just traded for a corner. So do you go out and still spend more draft capital, like high draft capital on a corner? Personally, I would say yes because it's still a need. But they might be looking at it completely different. They might say, hey, we already traded for one. We just signed another one in free agency. We're good. They could have a completely different mindset than you and I have. So that's what makes
Yeah.
it fun. When come draft time, whatever we think goes out the window, and the GM and the guys that make the big bucks are going to start calling the shots. So
Yeah, unfortunately, no one gives a shit about what we think, Robert. I wish they did. I wish they did. They should, because I look at it from a very open ended perspective. You're looking at it from a fan's perspective, as I am as well, and it's like, well, maybe we have some good insight here. They're obviously the experts and everybody that's behind closed doors in the laboratory. They're doing what they got to do, but to see it from a further back perspective, a more open bird's eye view, it could be beneficial to even those guys, the big wigs that are making the calls. So it's interesting. There's a lot to unpack. We take up all the hard drive space and more, talking about every aspect of it, as we both know. But it's really interesting to see how these decisions are made, and once they get to once Roger Goodell gets to the stand and makes that call, opens that card up, that call is made and that's locked in. Obviously, you can trade for picks and whatnot after they've been made, but it's kind of one of those things where it's really fun to watch it take place and see how the sausage gets made before the season takes place. But yeah, you bring up a good point. You really don't know, regardless of stock, and I call it stock. What is their rating going into the draft? You really have no idea, even if you have a great grade going into it, a great rating. You're still taking a big amount of risk on any player if you're taking them early. So there's a lot of gold in the rough, a lot of diamonds in the rough that can come in later rounds that have panned out to be well. Tom Brady being one that came very late in the draft. So you just never know who's going to blossom, who's going to take on the league, and who's going to really take it to the next level, both in reality and both figuratively. They're going to, they got to be able to compete at the next level, which, is a big jump from college to the NFL, as we've seen. So it's really cool to see it, and I'm happy to talk about it, and I'm excited for it. And it's great that it's in the city of Detroit as well. In light of this, I talked about this last night. Bill Belichick is going to be getting on the broadcast with Pat McAfee, and he's going to be talking about, just kind of in a casual environment, talking about the draft, talking about different things regarding the draft. And in light of all of that, he is still without a job. He's still unemployed. He's about to go to the unemployment line, and it's like, It's crazy this guy doesn't have a job. Yes, he's a 72-year-old coach, Hall of Fame coach, very decorated. I'm interested to see and kind of read his demeanor. He's a tough guy to read. I've seen him in casual environments. He's a casual guy. He's a normal guy. He's a human, and he can joke around. He can have fun, but it's like it's got to rain down on him. This is not the end, I don't think, for Bill Belichick, and he can't let his legacy go away like this. He hasn't finished out on top, and I guess I really don't know what he's really still reaching for. Because in that last Super Bowl win with Tom Brady, that could have been a good exit point for Bill Belichick, and he would have been decorated. He would have left in a
Yeah,
very high
how many
light.
rings do you need? I mean,
Well, it comes down to a greed factor too. How much do you need before you've done your part? And I guess Tom kind of had that same mentality. He's even teased about coming back now. So it's like, I guess when is enough enough? Is enough ever enough? So I guess where do you see him landing? Do you see him landing in a head coaching job? I can't see him taking a job as a coordinator, as even a GM. I just can't see him being behind closed doors. He has to be part of the action. He's very much like Tom Brady, very stubborn. I think in a good way, in a way that he wants to win, wants to continuously find his new ceiling. But I guess where does he land? Obviously, didn't pan out with the Atlanta Falcons, and he didn't land there. Didn't get a call back, which I was surprised to see. But I guess how do you think Bill is going to carry himself on McAfee's show, and how do you think he's going to land, especially post draft when he's used to being in the game pre draft?
I think he might be checking out. Really, I mean, the guy, like you're saying, he's what 72 years old.
Yeah,
So I think the game's kind of passed him by a little bit. You know, they tried the whole Mac Jones thing. Let's get a pocket passing quarterback, and let's have Matt Patricia run our offense. I don't know. I don't even know what they were doing over there. It was kind of a weird few years for New England, but um, he's kind of had a lot of bad drafts. You look at his draft classes, like the last several years, pretty much post Super Bowl runs, they're pretty much all bad. Like you can't find but a few players in those drafts that are like panning out. So I don't know. I think that the game's just passing him by. And I think he's going to be more. I think if he gets hired, it'll be more in like an advisory role, like a team advisor, kind of like how the Lions hired Chris Spielman. You know, I think it'd be something like that. I don't think he's going to even be directly involved. You know, I could be wrong. You know, he could come back. You know, you see guys like who is Dick Vermeil, right? He comes back
yeah.
after years and coaches, and you know they win a ring. So anything can happen, but I don't know. If he's enjoying retirement, you know, his early retirement here, who knows? It's up to him ultimately, but he's coming from a franchise where he was the GM and the coach, which I don't know if he's going to be able to get that same setup elsewhere, which kind of lends me to believe like he's going to be in some kind of advisory role going forward. But um,
Yeah,
that's
you
kind of
could be
my opinion.
right. You could be right because I think that he could be kind of like a Spielman, where he's still part of the team. He's still part of the team, whatever team it is. I think he's kind of passed by the New England Patriots. I don't know if the relationship was retained with Robert Kraft or not, but I can see him kind of being a guy that's going to hype the team up, is going to get with the team and say, "Hey, this is what we got to do," and you kind of being like that advisory guy where you're still in the thick of it, but you just might not be holding the playbook and having a headset on the sidelines come Sunday. So it's just looking forward to. I guess I'm sure he's got things in the works. I'm sure he's not. It's not like he's hurting. I think his opportunities are as far as he's willing to push himself, and it's really about what does he want to do with his career going forward, or does he want to take a step back and be like, you know what, I had a great run, I'm done. And like we said previously, he's very well decorated. He can walk away from the game at
Yeah.
any point and be very happy with what he's accomplished. He really has a strong legacy, regardless of when he exited. So I was being a little bit hard on him in that regard. But usually, I guess I'm putting it in my perspective. If I was in his shoes, I would like to exit with a good notch on my belt where I can be really happy about what I just accomplished. Okay, boom, that was it. I'm done, and have a clean exit. But I feel like this is maybe not the cleanest of exits. Just trying to find a job, not getting the job in Atlanta. and kind of going through the motions, I guess, pre-draft, and that's kind of passed him by as far as being a part of that decision making pre-draft. But I'm sure he'll land fine, and I'm excited to see where he lands. And it could be in a media analyst role. I just can't see him being a commentator. I really can't see him being a commentator. It doesn't seem like him or his style. But
Yeah, he's not a very talkative person, right? I mean,
no, he's not. He's not, which is fine. I mean, he did a hell of a job coaching in New England, and he had his own way of doing things, and it worked for him. But I just can't see him talking about other teams happily. He'd rather be in the thick of it. Kind of like Tom Brady's not a commentator. I know he has signed deals and whatnot. It's tough to see guys like that talk about other teams and be hyped about it. But I could be wrong. I could be wrong. These guys could surprise me. So I'm looking forward to see where he lands and what his future holds for him. Real quick, though, I want to talk about your take. What's your take on the Stephon Diggs trade? So we talked about it last week, a couple weeks ago. Obviously, a big, benchmark trade that was made by the Buffalo Bills for not really favorable results, I guess. So the Bills received a 2025 second round pick from the Minnesota Vikings in exchange for Diggs, a 2024 sixth round pick, and a 2025 fifth round selection. The Texans acquired the pick from the Vikings when they traded their 2024 first round pick to Minnesota last month, and this was, I believe, in April. So yeah, they're talking about in February that these decisions were made. But I guess it doesn't really add up for me because Stephon Diggs was the lethal weapon at the wide receiver position for the Buffalo Bills. Arguably, probably got them to a potential Super Bowl. Would have didn't pan out that way. Hasn't panned out that way for the Buffalo Bills, as we've seen, and they've been expected to go that far. But I guess what does this mean for the Buffalo Bills? How do they rebuild? How do they find another, wide receiver one for Josh Allen? And also, in hindsight, and the flip side, how does this add to the CJ Stroud Houston Texans offense?
yeah, well, I mean, that Texans offense was exciting. It's going to be even more exciting now with a guy like Diggs on the offense. But I was kind of surprised at the return for the trade. So you said I thought the second round pick was for this year. So it's not even for this year, it's for 2025.
Yeah, so the Bills receive a 2025 second round pick. Yeah, so that's 25.
Yeah, so I think the Bills kind of got a little swindled there. I mean, they had a Pro Bowl receiver that they traded with two picks and don't even get a pick for this year. So, I mean, at least they got something for him, being a guy that was pretty much on his way out of the team. He made that pretty public that he didn't want to play there anymore. And they kind of had some back and forth with Josh Allen about, he was basically saying, I made Josh Allen who he is, which is kind of crazy for a receiver to come out and say about somebody that's taken him to multiple playoff wins and everything. So I think it helps the Texans. It definitely hurts the Bills a little bit, but I think the Bills are going to replace him with somebody that's cheaper, a rookie or something a lot. Obviously, if they got a future second round pick, that could be a decent receiver in the second round. So you never know what they're going to do, but a lot of teams are just going younger and cheaper now with the skill positions, with receiver and running back and tight end and that sort of thing. So um, I think it can easily work out for both teams, but it's hard to look at the Bills now and say they're a better team without their best receiver. And it's hard not to look at Houston now and see them add a Pro Bowl receiver and think that they're not going to be even better than they were. So I think it was a little bit one-sided trade, but time will tell. If Houston comes out and wins a bunch of games and the Bills start to falter, it'll play to what we just talked about. But who knows? Maybe the Bills go out and immediately replace him, and it's like nothing ever happened.
Yeah, it's interesting what's happening with the skill positions nowadays. They're becoming a glorified dime a dozen, really. And it's like, who are you going to take in whatever round for whatever price, and what are you going to make them into? What are you going to, condition them? What are you going to mold them into? It could be a Pro Bowl receiver. It could be a Pro Bowl running back. And you're looking at all these different factors, all these different athletes coming into the field, and there's a lot of players that can kind of stand very close by one another, regardless of what round are probably going to go at. And it's interesting to see that side of it because you can see this happening and you can kind of look at it at face value and be like, oh wow, the Bills they got the wrong side of the stick here. They got the wrong side of this deal. But then you could go into the future and maybe there's bigger plans. Maybe they're looking into the future and hoping they can hold out for a second round pick in 2025, and that's going to be their next Stephon Diggs player. So there's a lot at play here and there's a lot at stake, but I think Sean McDermott and the upper offices, the higher offices there at Buffalo, they know what they're doing. I think they're a smart organization. The franchise, they know what they're doing. They got some big team players there, so hopefully they know what they're doing. Bills Mafia is one of my teams, so I'm hoping they know what they're doing with this trade because I like Diggs. Yeah, he was a dickhead, and yeah, he was. You could say whatever you want about the guy, and he was on his way out. Bad blood. I think for that reason alone, it was good to get rid of him. He got bad mojo with him, and it's kind of an Aaron Rodgers situation where he was kind of not getting along with everybody, even with Tom Brady when he left the Patriots. It was a bad blood scenario. You don't want to be able to force that, and you see that replicate itself on the field. So I think it's for the best, no matter what the spoils were for each side. I think a new location for Stephon Diggs is going to be good for him, and a clear mind and basically cleared up roster as far as the wide receiver one in some regards is going to be good for Buffalo. So regardless of what happens, I think it's going to benefit both teams immensely.
Yeah, you got to think like the Bills. I mean, their window is only going to be open so long. I mean, they only got Josh Allen for so long. He's kind of a mobile running quarterback, more likely to get injured. They kind of sold out and signed some big name players like Von Miller, that he had some legal issues and whatnot. Um, so we'll see. I mean, hopefully they can keep it going. It's exciting seeing them play in the playoffs, and you know, it's kind of getting tiresome, just like the Patriots when they were winning. Getting tiresome to see the Chiefs win every year. So
Tell me
hopefully we
about
can
it.
see someone dethrone them here soon, and the Bills would be a good team to do that.
Yeah, I agree. It's gonna be prosperous. You notice more teams, and you talked about the Dan Campbell, Brad Holmes scenario of just taking risks, really putting risk ahead of the reward when the reward really isn't, clear and in view right now. And I made the analogy of picking somebody that you have a heart to heart with, or you have a feeling, you got a gut feeling about, you got a hunch. It's kind of like going for 4th and 3 when you're in field goal range, and you're fighting for a win against I'm not going to go there, but basically it's a similar risk. It's a similar risk reward. You don't really know the reward. The reward isn't right in front of you. You're hoping for that reward to come through, and sometimes it does, sometimes it don't. But taking that risk, I guess, is respectable, and you're seeing it happen more and more in the NFL. Um, Not just the Lions, but also here with the Bills, and you're seeing it with some other teams too.
Sometimes maybe good, sometimes maybe shit.
Yes, very well said. Very well said. That's very true, and it's kind of they're rolling the dice. They're rolling the dice, seeing what's going to happen, throwing something throwing paint at the wall and see what's going to stick. So it's going to be cool to see how that pans out. Let's talk about the team of the hour, Detroit Lions. So Robert, I got to get your take on the Detroit Lions. What does their outlook look like? How high is their ceiling? And what are they looking to accomplish in this 2024 NFL draft in Detroit? Nonetheless, who are they looking to add?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few positions that come to mind. The first ones that really come to mind is edge rusher. Try to get somebody opposite of Aiden Hutchinson. He was kind of alone as far as the pressures once we lost McNeil, due to injury. So really need some more pressure on the quarterback. I know like cornerback itself is a big need, but it becomes less of a need when you have a quarterback that's on the ground the whole game. So I'm hoping they get somebody like Robinson out of Missouri. He had like 9 sacks for Missouri, and he's kind of a big guy. Like 290, like 6'5", 290, I think is his size. So get somebody that you can move them around on the D line just like they do with Hutchinson, and get some more pressure on that quarterback. Um, they could take a corner. Um, Unfortunately, there's a lot of corners that are drafted to get picked before the Lions, so they're kind of in this no man's land at 29. So Do they just take the best corner available, or are they going to pivot and take somebody else because there's a better positional value elsewhere? I could easily see him taking a guard or a center or an offensive lineman because Ragnow is basically he's been banged up to the point where I don't know how long he's going to play. Are they going to give Decker a new contract? A left tackle, and they re-signed Glasgow at guard, but they could still use some help there at guard as well. So I could see him going O line, edge rusher, or corner with the pick, and I would not be surprised with Brad Holmes' track record if they move around. If they just sit there at 29 and take a guy, I'm going to trust them at this point. I mean, the guy's had a great track record, but I wouldn't be shocked either if they moved around. So, um, yeah, it's going to be exciting. I think the best pick for them would be to take an edge rusher, but the edge rusher is just not as deep this year. So it is what it is. I mean, if they're at 29 and all the great edge rushers are off the board, like Robinson's not there, Latu and Chop Robinson, if all them guys are off the board, then you're left to pivoting to something else. But I believe in Brad Holmes. He hasn't let us astray so far, so we'll just let him cook, man.
Let him cook, baby. Put him in the kitchen. Let him cook.
Yep.
Yeah, so I mean, it's been dubbed a good problem to have. Sitting at 29, the Detroit Lions at 29, towards the bottom of the picking pool, picking position in the NFL draft. It's a good problem to have. I think it's Brad Holmes and the Detroit Lions are happy to have that problem. Since they've been more close to the top in years past. So we're gonna see who they get. Do they trade for a higher position? That's yet to be determined. That's kind of out of our hands, and behind closed doors are those decisions being made. So it's it's a lot to unpack, and we'll just have to see how the cards fall. Talking about the jerseys, though. Talking about the jerseys. What do you think about the new jerseys?
I love it, man. These are my favorite Lions jerseys that they've unveiled so far. I love the new helmet for the black alternate jersey. I love the blocky style of like the numbers and the lettering. It's kind of like a throwback. But they kept like the newer logo and everything. So I really like them. I think they look slick. Can't wait to see him play in them. I kind of wonder how much they're going to use that alternate black uniform. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's kind of sad too because like they had that cool alternate gray uniform last year that's
Yeah,
probably gonna be gone because they can only have one alternate. But I guess they can have three helmets now, is what I'm hearing. So maybe they still
really.
have that old logo helmet.
Yeah,
I'm
I
not
like
for
that old
sure.
logo with the blue and white stripe and the old lion. Those are nice. The only thing I wish is that they had the block Lions text on the chest plate, because that would have been the most slick thing ever. I mean, bring back the OG Calvin Johnson era of Lions football, and that would just be that'd be game over for me. I think they should bring back a retro Barry Sanders era, nothing on the front, just number, and then it's just the blue. You see it sometimes, you see it here and there, holidays, whatnot. But to see the OG and vintage, the vintage wave is really coming back into a trend nowadays, and we're seeing everything become vintage, left and right. Every industry is becoming more old school and vintage retro, and it's cool to see. I love it. I think the retro logos, everything, color schemes, they all did it the best, and they put everything that we have nowadays that's new school to shame. So I like them, though. I do.
Yeah, it took them a couple playoff wins to get some new jerseys, but here we are, and I think they're going to be great.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Looking forward to it. Well, there you have it, folks. The NFL draft is coming up April 24th through the 27th in Detroit, Michigan. If you're here in town, go ahead and try to attend, get down there, and be a part of the craziness. It's going to be a riot down there, I'm sure. I'm going to be watching on the tube. But it's exciting to have it in Detroit, especially with everything going on with Detroit Lions football. And they're on the up and up. They're on the climb right now. So they can only go higher, I think. So. And I'm not a Lions fan, Robert. I'm not a Lions fan, so that's big coming from me.
Do you think the local pressure adds for somebody like Brad Holmes? Do you think think that's gonna affect any of his decisions? Or do you think he's just a veteran to where doesn't matter that it's here. Like, we're not going to trade up to number 10 or whatever just because we're in Detroit.
I would like to think Brad Holmes and his experience would be in a position where he can make a very educated call, and he's going to take it all. And basically, regardless of the location, he's going to make the right decision. I don't think it's going to get to his head, though it's possible. Though it's possible with all the hype surrounding Detroit Lions football, it could come into play. I don't think it will, but anything's possible.
Yeah, it's going to be fun to see.
Yes, it will. Yes, it will. Well, that brings us to the end of the show, ladies and gentlemen. Robert, got any final words, final thoughts with people going into the NFL draft?
Nothing other than, as a Lions fan, usually this was our Super Bowl, right? We were waiting every year to see, okay, we get a fresh start, because the last season was so horrible. But this year is different, right? I mean, we were on the cusp of a Super Bowl. Now we get to see if we can get some players that it's going to put us over the edge. So it's a new layer of excitement. So just enjoy it, and if you're able to make it down, definitely recommend it. I don't know how often the draft is going to come to Detroit, so
That's right.
take advantage while you can.
That is right. That is true. Perfect. Well, you heard it here first, folks. Make sure to check us out on social media. GinSportsNetwork.com is our website, at GinSportsNetwork on IG, and our link tree is in the bottom of the podcast. But for now, I'm John J. II, alongside Robert Rachow with Double Coverage, the premier NFL podcast of the Gin Sports Network. Have a great night.